Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Writers and Wonders podcast. I'm Petra here with Yarim. We are two writers of women's fiction, 2,000 kilometers apart. I am in Hungary and I focus on magical realism. Yarim is in Norway and she explores themes of belonging and coming of age. And together here we just wonder about writing, all that it entails, and to reach our goals of getting published. On today's episode, we will discuss the influence of celebrity book clubs, from Reese Witherspoon to the OG Oprah Winfrey to Dakota Johnson and more, and how do they impact writers. So maybe we should start first with just addressing the book clubs that we know and we have heard of. And just for full transparency, I think I can say this for the both of us, that as we were a little bit researching this topic, we were surprised about how many celebrity book clubs are out there, because we knew about a few, which are like the OG Oprah Winfrey book club, of course, right? And the Reese Witherspoon one and the Jenna book club and so on. But I mean, I looked at these lists of book clubs and I found that it's like 20 plus book clubs at least, which is shocking to me. But it also tells me that apparently there is simply a market for these book clubs. People are interested in keeping these alive in a way, by joining the book clubs and participating in the activities.
Yeah, for sure. I think that book clubs and reading, it seems, is very trendy. There's so many now, it's a little hard to keep up. Like, if everybody has a book club pick of the month, it's like, how many books can you read and how many of them are you following? Do you become a devotee to one particular celebrity? And I don't know, I think it's interesting and it's something to think about, like you said, in terms of pushing the book market, the publishing industry. But for sure, I think for writers, there seems to be a strong impact and influence on if you get on one of these book club lists, which is, I guess, in many ways, that's how you're going to get the push to get your name and your book out there. And then on the other hand, is it so much that then where's kind of like the organic way of getting to books now to readers? So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you follow any specific book clubs. I have a couple of friends who are in California and they don't exclusively follow one celebrity book club, but they do try to take from one of the sort of the celebrity picks. It just becomes an easy way for them to find a selection for the next month. And because there's sort of a record of them, even if it's from the last year or the year before, I think many of these picks are current enough to keep reading interesting. And of course, some of the celebrities pick older books, which I think is also nice too. Yeah, so I don't know if there are any that you specifically follow, or how do you follow them for relevance to your genre or what you're writing, for example?
In the day, I was actually following the book club of Emma Watson, which I don't think is active anymore, maybe, or she kind of stepped out of it and is not really giving her name to it, but maybe it still lives on. I haven't tracked that one down, but I remember that I actually bought a few books based on her recommendation. So I was directly influenced by her, I think just her choices, in reading. And now these days, I just sort of keep track of maybe what Reese is doing with the book club, but I think there hasn't been even just one book that I purchased and read because it was on her list. I had one book which I read and almost used as a comp, and then I found out that it was actually on Reese's list, but that's it. So I'm not really following them actively. On the other hand, I actively keep wondering about why they are such a big thing. And I was looking into I was trying to find the answer to this question. Is it like a big deal for a writer to end up on any of these book club lists? Like, does it affect the book sales and how does it affect it? And I just found a couple of interviews with authors, and they were talking just quite vaguely about the fact that, yes, it's a big deal because their sales get such a boost because of the fact that they are on that list. And also the other effect is that you have briefly mentioned is that it's easier to get on a bestseller list if their book becomes a book club pick of a certain month. So there's this promotional marketing power of these book clubs, the celebrity book clubs. And I think it clearly affects the business side of it. And now that I'm talking about it, I think I found actually just a few numbers regarding the sales side of things. So 48 out of Jenna's 68 picks appeared on the New York Times bestseller list. 68 of Reese's 97 picks appeared on the same bestseller list. And another statistic I found was that all 27 Oprah picks released on the same day as their announcement became bestsellers, like every single one. Like, she really is the OG in this. And Read with Jenna has launched 47 New York Times bestsellers since it all started, which are like pretty big numbers, unbelievably so. Other data, which is more about the sales side of things. Apparently, Reese's picks outsell comparable fiction by 700%, approximately 700%. It's like 700, that's a lot. Then another stat is Oprah's picks spiked sales by 400% in week one. And so the book club picks help with getting on the bestseller list, and then they help with like the first week of sales of your book as well. So it's pretty clear that this is beneficial for authors out there if that happens for them. On the other hand, I was thinking about who are these authors that get the chance to be part of this, because I'm just getting to this from two angles. So like, one question I had, like, how many of these authors are debut authors? Because that might be interesting. So are they like well established or like first time writers? And the other thing was, which maybe is a naive question to have, but I was wondering, is it always traditionally published books that get on the list, or has there ever been an example where a self-published book was maybe picked for any of these book clubs? And I haven't found an example like that. So it seems to me that it's always traditionally published books. And regarding the debut authors, I found that they are sometimes on the list, but more so the well-established authors. And, just we are sitting here as people who are trying to get published in the first place. So I don't think that's the reality for us to soon become a book club pick. But I was wondering about...
Never say never, Petra. You have to sell it to the universe, receive it.
Yeah, let's do that. But I was wondering how much of this whole system relies on connections and the connections certain people have in the industry.
Well, first, I just want to add, when it comes to the celebrity book clubs influencing basically whether or not they get onto bestseller lists and etc. I remember when I was younger, and I don't think I wasn't reading the books. I think I was a little bit young, but I remember when Oprah, before people had podcasts, and she just had her show, and she started doing her Oprah book club picks, and she would announce it on the show and usually invite the author, the following month or something, to do an interview. And I remember she would announce the book and instantly it would get on all of these bestseller lists. So much to the point where I think her team was getting so bombarded with all these sort of probably requests. And also it was sort of becoming this question of, well, if you get on the list, then it automatically drives up your publication success. And then there was this book that raised a lot of controversy because I think I can't remember exactly, the author the story was maybe something about it was not so genuine. There was controversy surrounding the author, who had written and what, and that sort of a thing. And there was, of course, a lot of people were disappointed and upset, but already this book had sold so much. So then there was a time for a while she started to pick sort of older book selections, classics. So, I thought that was interesting as well, because then readers were able to revisit novels maybe that have been around for a long time, but it didn't have this. And they also still went on the bestseller list, but at least it wasn't sort of driving the instant overnight success of an author. And in case there, I don't know, was some kind of controversy or there was something questionable about the authenticity of certain books. So I wanted to add that. And I think for the debut authors, if I'm not mistaken, I think Jenna Bush Hager for a while, or maybe it's her sort of this imprint that she started with one of the big publishers,
It's the
wanted to
imprint.
focus on debut picks.
Yes.
Whether that is happening or not, because I think it's fairly new and I haven't been following all of the selections. I mean, so I thought that was very interesting. She comes from this family legacy of librarians. Her mother was a librarian. I believe her grandmother, when she was the first lady, also was pushing reading for the US, like all of these national programs for schools. And so I do think her book club also takes into consideration debut authors. But at the same time, sometimes I wonder, it can be an author's, I've heard second, third, fourth book before they really take off. And so in that sense, yeah, maybe they're not a debut author, but they're still able to sort of get up on this new platform, this new reach of readership. So maybe it doesn't always help the sort of literal debut author, but it can help authors become bigger successes, even if it's a later book in terms of their sort of manuscript writing. So I do think that that is interesting.
Yeah, I was just mentioning this side of the conversation about the debut authors because it just made me think about how just the fact that you cannot just simply get on these lists, So like as a writer, from so many angles, of course, that is true from so many perspectives. But regarding this, whether this is your first book that is getting published or it's like the second, third, or whatever, there is a difference in how much of a chance you get in this regard. So that's one thing. And the other is that this book club word is heavily connected to the traditional publishing word as well. And I was just thinking about, you mentioned Jenna and how she has the book club, and now she has this deal with, I think, with Random House, the imprint deal. And I read an essay about, this was like around the time when she announced this partnership with Penguin Random House. And someone wrote about how this might be, again, from a certain perspective, might be a bit problematic because she is like an example of concentration of power in the publishing world, because she has this role as somebody who influences choices through her book club. And now she has an imprint as well, or like a joint imprint, whatever. And she has a very strong role in basically deciding what gets published. And also, in a way, through her book club, she can influence after a book gets published, like how successful it becomes, if you know what I mean. So just wanted to mention that someone might say that this is maybe too much power to hold for a single person from a business perspective, and such strong influence she can practice in publishing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a real catch-22 because on the one hand, it's absolutely great that you have these celebrity influences. And she's not your traditional, well, I don't know what a traditional celebrity is in these days, this world, but she has a national morning show platform, right? In that sense, I think it is fantastic that someone like her, all these celebrities are really pushing for more reading. In this day and age when you're competing for attention. There's just so much social media. There's so many streaming programs. There's, Netflix, HBO, Prime, Disney, YouTube, Shorts, Instagram. Then it's so great that someone like her can really influence and push for more reading, because I know that that is genuinely something she does. She talks about it a lot for supporting reading, improving reading opportunities for her children, for all children. But yeah, I mean, because she has that influence, then of course, a big publisher is going to be happy to hold hands with her and think,
Hmm.
okay, let's pick some new books and new debut authors. And yeah, is that too much influence? I don't know, but maybe it's not necessarily a bad thing. I guess it comes down to who gets picked. And
Hmm.
it's interesting you bring her up, because I also read the first pick for that imprint
Hmm.
was actually I think it is the mother of one of the children that goes to school with her kids. I think
Yes.
they met at some kind of, it could be anything, an event, or maybe it was like school drop off. I don't know. They
I
casually,
specifically I remember this one. She was on the Kelly Clarkson show and said that they had a play date with the other
yeah.
mom and her kids, and as they were just casually talking to each other, she learned that their mom was actually, I think, still in the middle of writing the story, or it was just finished it, and they started talking. So yeah.
Yeah. So, which is like pretty incredible. I mean, I wish I had some like famous celebrity moms in our little school here, who happen to be like one of the country's or the world's biggest sort of book pickers. So, it doesn't necessarily happen for everyone. And maybe this is where certain circles or certain chance opportunities occur because you are in a different situation or a different place.
Hmm.
But when it comes to sort of this commercialization and the impact and the influence of these celebrity book clubs, it makes me think of, I think, one of the reasons Reese Witherspoon started hers, and I think also the basis of the start of her Hello Sunshine, like the whole production company, and that was that she felt that women writers and women were underrepresented. And
Hmm.
she started her book club, and she was really looking for women's fiction. And now she has really taken that and, she has produced, she has starred in book adaptations into TV series, into movies. And so that is also like a pretty powerful outcome. Again, catch 22. Are you going to say that that is, someone who has too much influence? I think we celebrate that she does have that influence and she's able to do it. I guess it's a good dilemma in that sense. The only thing is that, like we talked about, then how do maybe real, I don't want to say real, but people who don't necessarily have kids that go to school with the world's biggest book pickers. How do you, well, this is a long path, when you're getting published, how do you get traditionally published and how do you get picked, right? Is
Hmm.
there anything you can do? I guess you have to
Oh,
write a
very
good book.
good question.
And I think that there's probably a lot of marketing, there's maybe lobbying, a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes. Obviously, it's not just, I can't imagine that it's just Reese Witherspoon sitting there reading the books by herself and deciding by herself. I mean, she's running a company. It has moved on to teams of people who are
Yeah.
taking this, and there must be something linked to the timeline of when books are published. So I think it's a whole moving sort of vehicle factory that does all of this.
I actually did some reading on this because I was interested in how the pigs just get to be born in a way, and I found that, so First of all, there are these book scouts, like whole agencies who do this book scouting thing. But the point is that Reese does work with an agency like that based on my reading. And also at her production company, she has a few people on staff who cover that part of her business as well. And the interesting thing is that I found specifically about Reese, I don't know if that's true for the other celebrities and their book clubs, but Reese and her book scouts very often get to read manuscripts at somewhere at the first stage of the book production process or book publishing process. They get to see the manuscript before it is maybe fully finalized and then gets published. And so just to, feed this back into what you said about adjusting to the whole timeline of book publishing, Reese gets to see these stories quite early on. And so she can make, and her team, of course, can make a decision quite early on about whether they want to pick that book or not. And then obviously this will help with book adaptation and the film process of the whole thing as well, because as we discussed, she always has these deals to kind of say the first yes, or how is it called, like she has the right to
The right of first refusal.
yes, to say that, okay, I'm going to adapt this into a movie or not. So she can make that decision. She's the first to make that decision with her production company. And so to be able to do that, this is why it's important to see simply a manuscript as early as possible. And I found that interesting because this shows you how important those connections probably are, like the book scouts know the editors, the literary agents, because how else you are going to get to read a manuscript? You need to get in contact with an editor at a publishing house or the agent of the writer. So again, the inner circles, which is not, I'm not bringing this up because it's a negative thing, but it's just something to, I guess, take note of simply, that this is how this system works, the connections.
Well, and I think you had alluded to this, or you had raised this earlier as well, this question about, traditional publishers and self-publishers and who gets picked. And I think that this is somewhere probably where traditional publishing can help, because if you're sort of connected through that process, as you mentioned, if you are a very well-connected, established agent or editor and you come along a great manuscript and you're able to feed it into one of these book clubs, then maybe, as you mentioned, I think Reese Witherspoon also, I've heard Mindy Kaling is also doing something because she does, I believe, with Amazon, where she maybe also her team, and she also gets her hands on some books, some manuscripts where she also sort of gets this first right of refusal situation. So I would imagine that being along this traditional publishing path can maybe help support that, just because you are following a team that is going to be more established and connected to some of these celebrity clubs. And also, I think some of them are maybe themselves looking into publishing manuscripts. I get the impression Sarah Jessica Parker, because she has, is it called like SJP Literary? She's also an avid reader, and she has also talked about publishing manuscripts amongst the, many things that she's already involved with. So I think what you mentioned, maybe that is part of the reason where traditional publishers or traditionally published books have sort of a better chance at getting on some of these lists. I mean, I don't know if we still call the Colleen Hoover books traditionally published, self-published. Her original was going down the self-publishing track, right? And at some point, she got picked up, and then now it's a whole enterprise and so many things have happened with that.
Yeah. As you were addressing this, I was just thinking about like maybe at least many people who go on the self-publishing path, they probably don't even care that much about becoming a book club pick or becoming or going on a bestseller list, because I see these discussions between writers online and many people who like deliberately just don't want to get into traditional publishing. One of their reasons is that they don't, for many reasons, they just don't like the atmosphere of traditional publishing. Maybe all of these things that we mentioned, like, the inner circles and how many different things can influence whether your book sells or not. And so maybe we are talking about this, that traditionally published books are probably always going to have a better chance, or maybe these would be the only books that would get on these book club lists. But the other side of this quotation maybe is that self-published authors don't even want this. So maybe it's just fine. So I was just thinking about that.
Well, to each his own, I guess you can refuse to be on a list or maybe not enter a path of kind of getting in a way of becoming selected. But I have to say, I love when I think Oprah, her book club account maybe does this, where they show authors receiving the phone call from Oprah to be
Yeah.
told like they are, this month's pick. And
Mhm.
it's normally a pretty genuine reaction. And I mean, when I see authors getting that phone call and it's like, "Hi, this is Oprah," and you're just like, "Oh my gosh, congratulations!" And that sort
Yeah.
of, can you imagine? I mean, I think that is. I love watching those reels. So I mean, whether that's a traditionally polished stuff, like it's just that genuine moment, right? Of the excitement and the feeling of like this is really happening. This is crazy. So
Yeah.
that's kind of an aside, a little off topic, but I do love to see when people have that moment documented. It's kind of fun.
And it also just brings something else to my mind, that often when we talk about writing and publishing, whatever subtopic we're talking about, we often land on this very basic thing, that some of it is just so positive, but other times everything is just so challenging. And I think this book club thing is the same in a way. Like, it can be so controversial in a way, because as we discussed, how inner circles and connections count. Yes, true. And also everyone, I think, knows that Reese also does this for business, and Jenna also probably does this for business related reasons. So, and at the same time, they also have these genuine intentions regarding, book culture and simply making people read, which is a good thing. But at the same time, obviously, these whole book clubs are very beneficial for them from a business point of view. And then this that you mentioned is something that makes you remember the writers in the scenario, that yes, this whole thing is a business, and it counts who are the people that you know, or your agent and the editors and the book scouts and the celebrities, so many people. But at the end of the day, how nice it might be and must be when a writer gets on a list, and it basically it supports their way of living as a writer, because even, just the two of us and other writers out there, especially those who haven't become published authors yet, we all have this dream of just living as a writer. So like writing being your main income, I guess. And I think like becoming a book club pick must help a lot with that. It won't solve all your problems, obviously, but since we discussed, how it can help with maybe going on a bestseller list or directly help you with book sales, that must be like a key moment in helping you living your dream as a writer, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think you sort of explain it in a way that, I think what I want to say is you can't avoid commercialism, right? You just said, yeah, we all want to be writers and have this become a profession that you can live off of, right? So then, of course, publishing is an industry. These book clubs are going to drive the sales of books. People are going to read more. Like, of course, then it's a great thing. Are there inner circles? Are there connections? Yeah, probably. I mean, they are there for probably all industries, all types of work. I mean, it's natural, it happens. So I think it's just we have to see sort of the good side of it. Are some of the celebrity book clubs able to commercialize off of their picks as well? Yeah, probably. But I think that, like you mentioned, they do it because they have these initial intentions that are driving and pushing for, whether it be more women's fiction, whether it be more reading in general, whether it's freedom to read what you want, that sort of a thing. I think that that is a good thing at the end of the day. So, yeah, it's not easy to become one of these picks. So, how do you do it? I'm not sure that we will ever be able to answer that question, but we just have to be open-minded, and ready to receive if you ever get that phone call from Oprah.
Okay, so this has been our episode discussing the world of celebrity book clubs, and we hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment anywhere where you find this content, and just come and join us in the next one.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for listening.